did not impact Barbados as heavily as other islands, and so we were able to fly in, and I actually got an opportunity to teach at the Institute of Internal Auditors in Barbados, and it was really a great time meeting the members, and also just working in a different environment for what I'm normally used to in terms of working outside North America, and it was just amazing. The people were fantastic. This is the group of attendees that were there, and I want to give a special thanks to Corey, the president of the Institute of Internal Auditors Barbados chapter, for inviting me to come to the event to speak on topics of privacy, artificial intelligence, FTX, Theranos, and generally it's a theme about beyond the numbers. And Corey was a wonderful connector between the different courses and different topics that I discussed during the session, and really great people, warm, welcoming, just really lovely. And I was really excited to be there. And hopefully, I'll get to come back at another point because I would love to do that. So that was my week last week. But this week in artificial intelligence news, as I said before, the artificial intelligence news is constant. It's a constant churn. If you follow certain podcasts, Hard Fork is a great one from the New York Times. If you look at any major newspaper, they have an AI section. It's just hard to keep up. There's something developing, good, bad, and ugly, almost every day when it comes to artificial intelligence. So I just wanted to go through a few things that caught my eye this week, and I thought I'd share those with you. So we're going to get into this. I'm going to share my screen. And for the first one, I thought was a really important one, especially for the accounting and finance space, because a lot of artificial intelligence solutions and things that we talked about, as I said before, I went to Collision 2024, a large tech conference, is about the power of artificial intelligence and generative AI to really change the way we work. But the things we have to think about are privacy and what those algorithms look like in terms of what information they're using to train the generative AI models or machine learning or deep learning. And not just privacy, but also what is the information and how it's being used, and especially for areas that accounting and finance professionals work in, and thinking about our fiduciary duty and the relationships we have with third parties and the trust that people put in us, that we want to make sure that we're using these tools with professional skepticism and professional judgment. So this gets into how these models are trained. So let me share my screen here, and let's get into the first news item that I'd like to go through. And we'll go this way. I'll just describe what I'm showing here on the screen. So Google, like a lot of other companies, has made a change to the way they are telling users they're going to use the information that you might be giving as you interact with any number of Google products. Gmail, Google's Gemini, their generative AI tool, and other cloud AI functions within Google, including Google Drive. So a lot of people use Google products, including myself. So this New York Times article and other articles, I'm just using this article as the platform, but other articles have discussed this. Google is not the only company doing this, but the fight for information is on, because artificial intelligence, and especially generative AI, is trained on two types of data: public information available on the web and private information. And it's important to understand what private is, because privacy is a legal term, data privacy. And private information needs explicit permission from Google, Apple, Microsoft, whatever AI company might be using that to train its models. And public information, which is a lot on the internet, is available for these large companies to use to train their generative AI, deep learning, and machine learning models. So what they want to do, what Google, what Apple, what Microsoft, what OpenAI, I forgot to talk about them, of course, the big one in the space because of ChatGPT, is they want to open up the private side to say, we want more access to private information with permission, so we're not crossing any boundaries in terms of breaking privacy laws. So what they're doing is they're changing their terms of service with you, the user. So one of the examples here is what Google has done in very slight ways. And I'll read out what the New York Times article points out with Google's terms of service and what they've changed. So this is Google's terms of service for any Google product you might use, which is a lot, including search engines, right? Chrome as a browser, Google as a search engine. We use publicly available information to help train Google's AI models and build products and features like Google Translate, BART, Cloud AI capabilities. So when it says publicly available, part of that is they're trying to say we're using information that we have access to that is there, but they're also saying to you that when you interact with these services from Google, that information might actually move from private to public. And that's a big change. It's actually, in some ways, opening up both the private data food chain for AI, but also the public data. And what that wording is trying to do is trying to get access to more data through a permission structure to say that when you interact with Google through Gemini, you're actually really, your interaction is really public information that you're providing that we can use versus private where you need permission. They're still trying to get private information permission through users when you accept terms of engagement. But this one is saying, hey, you're giving us public information, which clears one hurdle for Google in terms of worrying about privacy issues. So that's a major development. And again, what these companies are trying to do is they're trying to get access to more data to train these companies. This brings us into our second news story, which is happening right now because certain industries are more affected right now by generative AI than others. And one of those industries is the music industry. And what OpenAI and Gemini and Copilot and other generative AI tools can do is they can take pieces of music and say, hey, that's not really proprietary or intellectual property. We're just taking a little piece here and creating our own new song where we don't have to give any attribution. Well, the music industry feels, hey, that's not actually the case. You are infringing on the artists, their songs, and we're going to launch a lawsuit. And this goes into the same concept as what we were talking before with Google's change in their policies. What is the information that is being used to train these models? Is it public? Is it private? Are there requirements for permission? Do there need to be royalties, especially for musicians and others? So this is a copyright infringement lawsuit. And this goes to the greater problems that are there when it comes to information that is being used to train artificial intelligence. Where is this information coming from? And who owns it? And is it really just public versus private? And it's getting murky. What is public versus private when it comes to training these tools? So this is from Vanity Fair. And this is the groups that are suing, we'll just say, the developer of a particular AI music app, but it's really just any organization that is looking to use music. And it's led by Universal Music Group and Sony Music Group and Warner, so huge companies. Which is what's interesting about this as a paradox. They themselves might start using AI, Universal, Sony, Warner, to produce music, but they still don't want other developers, large or small, to use them without some sort of attribution or royalty. So again, music industry, actors, voice actors, they're more impacted right now with the proprietary nature of how these models are fed. Are they really getting permission from the musicians, from the record labels, from the artists? And that's another question. And even artists who are in another space, like those that do photography or provide graphics to Adobe, they're basically saying, hey, now there's a generative AI function in Adobe. How are these AI tools being trained? Are they being trained on my work as a photographer, as an artist? So again, a lot of this is around privacy. And then we have another article as the Olympics come into play in Paris. And I thought this was really interesting because a lot of this is the theme of this has been public versus private information. What is public? What is private? What can these AI companies use to train? But then there's also permission. Hey, I'm giving you my permission to clone my voice. And Al Michaels, one of the most prominent sort of, I'd say, iconic broadcasters in American sports, has given permission to, I believe it's NBC. Is it NBC? Yes, correct. It's NBC to use his own voice as as an AI clone. So you'll hear recaps of the Olympics from what you would think would be Al Michaels, but it's actually going to be a clone of his voice. And this gets into other interesting questions because Al Michaels, in this way, owns his voice and has given permission, probably will be getting compensated for the way the AI model is being trained to duplicate and clone Al Michaels' voice. The, the challenge here is Al Michaels has given permission to do this. So he's built up his legacy. His voice has value. He's giving permission to NBC to clone his voice. What does it mean as we go forward for those that have presence in the media space or in the public speaking space and do give permission for their voice to be cloned? In this case, this information is public in terms of their disclosing this. But in the future, we might not know if a voice or an avatar is the actual person that's speaking or something where there has been a clone of that celebrity announcer or broadcaster. I'm particularly interested in this as a public speaker because this could be a space where, as a public speaker, you could start to say, I am going to use a clone of my voice or myself. I have HeyGen, and I've demonstrated that before, to run a course. Again, part of this is what are the judgment calls here? Do we have to disclose this information? Do we have to seek permission of the audience? NBC hasn't sought permission of the audience. They're just going to do this. So, yeah, part of this is a lot of this AI development news is in the space of media, artists, music, because that's the first group that's really feeling the brunt of choices they have to make in terms of generative AI. Our profession, accounting and finance, it's coming for us in terms of choices we'll have to make to how to use these tools and how to consider them. I did have an interview with Dominic Lepchik, a prominent lawyer and speaker and author in the data privacy space. And what I wanted to do, I wanted to share just a few minutes of my interview with her at Collision. You're going to hear it in a broader podcast with LumaQ, and I'll drip some of the video content on LinkedIn. But I wanted to share this with you because, again, I'd say the theme for this week's news and AI has been privacy. And privacy isn't always well understood by the accounting and finance profession. So I wanted to share this with you, an interview with myself and Dominic Lipschek, so that you could get a sense of why privacy is such an important topic as these AI developments continue to grow. So let us play this clip. So I'm not sure if that played the way I wanted it to play, but I'm just checking my LinkedIn feed. But if it didn't play, hopefully you got a few minutes of that. I mean, the space that she's in terms of understanding privacy and what it means for AI data to be trained and the way we use data as accounting and finance professionals are so important to consider. as we start to use these models and these solutions in our professional lives. And again, I'll put that segments of that video onto LinkedIn, but also you'll hear it on a podcast later on. Okay, and I hopefully my LinkedIn Live is going well, but I don't know. I'm seeing some stickiness, but we'll see. You can let me know in the comments. But thanks for watching today. This has been This Week in AI News. Again, not an exhaustive list of things that are happening in the space. I don't know if we'll be back at the same time next week. It's getting busy for me again with some deliverables of training, but I'll schedule something for either next week or the week after at a different time so that we can get into more. Again, I think what the theme has been more artificial intelligence news or developments that again are constantly streaming out into the world. Thanks for watching this week's LinkedIn Live with myself, and until next time, take care.